Ambassador Krel'thon stared at the holographic message floating above his desk, his four eyes blinking in perfect synchronization. In 50,000 years of galactic diplomacy, he had received some truly spectacular requests. The Zephyrian Empire once asked if they could relocate a black hole for better feng shui. The Crystal Collective wanted to copyright the color blue. But this took the prize for absolute mind-numbing absurdity. Earth wanted to send a bodyguard, one human bodyguard, to protect him during peace negotiations with the Nexari Empire. Krel'thon's tentacles twitched with what could generously be called amusement, though it felt more like a nervous breakdown approaching at light speed. The Nexari Empire, the same warrior species that had turned 12 star systems into smoldering debris fields over the past 3 years. The same armored nightmares who considered diplomatic immunity a suggestion rather than a rule. The same beings who had personally vaporized the last 4 ambassadors who dared suggest they might consider, perhaps, maybe, possibly thinking about peace. And Earth's brilliant solution? Send one bipedal mammal with opposable thumbs. Her computer, Krel'thon wheezed, his voice translator crackling with static, confirmed the species designation on this transmission. Species confirmed Homo sapiens. Planet of origin, Earth. Technological classification, barely space-worthy. Military assessment, adorably primitive. Krel'thon's head tentacles drooped in defeat. These humans had only achieved faster than light travel 23 years ago. 23. His breakfast this morning was older than their entire space program. Their idea of advanced weaponry was still throwing metal projectiles really fast. Their diplomats wore cloth tubes around their necks for reasons no xenobiologist had successfully explained. The hologram flickered, displaying casualty reports from the Nexari conflict. 3 million dead on Kepler Station. The entire population of Tau Ceti Prime reduced to radioactive dust. The Nexari didn't negotiate, they conquered. They didn't retreat, they regrouped. And they certainly didn't care about one human standing between them and their next target. But here was Earth, with the cosmic confidence of a species that had never faced true galactic warfare, offering their finest protection. Krel'thon could practically hear the universe laughing. Still, the Galactic Council's rules were clear. Every species had the right to provide security for diplomatic missions. Even if that security consisted of one confused primate who probably still thought plasma cannons were science fiction. Krel'thon pressed his authorization seal to the message with one trembling tentacle. What could possibly go wrong? Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle looking like the universe's most underwhelming punchline. Krel'thon had prepared himself for something impressive, maybe even intimidating. What he got was a medium-height bipe wearing what appeared to be casual fabric coverings and carrying a small bag that probably contained snacks. Ambassador Krel'thon? Jake extended one of his manipulator appendages. Jake Morrison, Earth Security Services, ready to keep you breathing. Krel'thon stared at the offered hand, then at Jake's remarkably unimpressive physique. No natural armor plating, no razor-sharp claws, no venomous spines or acidic secretions. Just pink skin stretched over what looked like the galaxy's most optimistic skeleton. The human skull didn't even have protective ridges. One good headbutt from a Nexari warrior would turn this creature's brain into soup. "This is you?" Krel'thon managed, his voice translator struggling with disbelief. "Yep, sorry, were you expecting someone taller?" "I get that a lot." Jake grinned, revealing flat, inefficient teeth that couldn't even properly rip flesh. "Don't worry though, I've got references. Stopped 3 bar fights last month and successfully opened a pickle jar that had everyone stumped." Krel'thon's eye stalks twisted in confusion. "Pickle jar?" "Yeah, turns out the trick is getting a good grip and twisting counterclockwise. Revolutionary stuff." Jake pulled out a small container and shook it. "Want some?" "They're spicy." Before Krel'thon could protest, Jake popped one of the preserved vegetables into his mouth and crunched down with obvious pleasure. The ambassador's sensors detected capsaicin levels that would hospitalize most civilized species. Jake just smiled and offered the container again. I'm good, thanks, Krel'thon whispered, wondering if Earth had sent him a walking biological weapon or just someone with catastrophically poor taste buds. Your loss. So when do I meet these Nexari guys? I brought cards if things get boring. Jake patted his bag cheerfully. Got any good knock-knock jokes in your culture? Because I've got about 47 lined up, and trust me, they're all terrible. Krel'thon's tentacles began twitching again. Earth hadn't just sent him a bodyguard. They'd sent him a maniac. The neutral space station's proximity alarms screamed like dying banshees as the Nexari fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Krel'thon pressed his face against the observation deck's reinforced transparasteel, watching 12 massive dreadnoughts arrange themselves in perfect battle formation. Each ship bristled with enough firepower to crack a moon in half, their hulls scarred from countless victories across the spiral arm. Wow, Jake said, sipping from a steaming cup he'd somehow acquired. Those are some serious compensation issues. You think they're overcompensating for something? Krel'thon's response died in his throat as the lead dreadnought's docking bay irised open. What emerged made his worst nightmares look like children's entertainment. The Nexari were evolution's answer to the question, what if we made something specifically designed to end other things? 9 feet of living armor and barely contained violence, they moved with the fluid grace of apex predators who had never encountered anything capable of stopping them. Their exoskeletons gleamed like polished obsidian, punctuated by glowing neural interfaces that pulsed with each heartbeat. Natural weapon spikes jutted from their forearms, elbows, and shoulders, while their heads housed multiple sensory clusters that could track a target across star systems. War General Thaxmore led the procession, his personal armor adorned with trophies from conquered worlds. Medals made from compressed planetary cores clinked softly against decorations carved from the last trees of extinct civilizations. His escort consisted of 12 elite guard, each one a living monument to organized destruction. They moved through the station's corridors like a slow-motion avalanche, their footsteps causing minor seismic tremors in the deck plating. Station personnel flattened themselves against walls, some weeping openly at the sheer presence of beings who had personally overseen the sterilization of entire solar systems. Coffee's pretty good here, Jake commented, completely oblivious to the parade of apocalypse flowing past them. Little bitter, though. You guys got any cream? Krel'thon's brain performed rapid calculations. 12 star systems conquered. 43 species extinct. 700 billion casualties. All stopped by one human who apparently rated beverage quality higher than imminent galactic warfare. Jake. Krel'thon whispered, his voice cracking like ice on a warming lake. Those beings have never lost a single military engagement. Their youngest warrior has more combat experience than our entire security force combined. They eat fear for breakfast and wash it down with the tears of their enemies. Jake nodded thoughtfully, then brightened. So, probably not morning people then? Good to know. Krel'thon realized with crystalline clarity that he was about to die. The Grand Conference Chamber had been designed to intimidate. Soaring crystalline walls reflected the light of a dozen suns, while the massive circular table could accommodate representatives from 50 different species. Today it felt more like a gladiatorial arena where words were the weapons and everyone was about to die anyway. War General Thaxmore settled into his reinforced chair with the satisfied rumble of a predator claiming territory. His elite guard positioned themselves at strategic points around the chamber, their weapon systems humming with barely restrained energy. The air itself seemed to thicken with menace. Ambassador, Thaxmore's voice sounded like grinding continental plates. We appreciate your optimism in calling this gathering. However, our terms remain unchanged. Krel'thon activated his diplomatic protocols, his translator working overtime to find appropriately respectful phrasing. The Galactic Council is prepared to discuss reasonable territorial adjustments and trade agreements that benefit all parties involved. Reasonable? Thaxmore's laugh could have shattered asteroids. We require complete surrender of all 12 disputed systems, immediate relocation of their populations to labor camps, and full mining rights to every world within 50 parsecs. Additionally, we demand tribute payments equivalent to 30% of each species' gross planetary product. Forever. The temperature in Krel'thon's suit plummeted as his circulatory system redirected blood flow away from his extremities. These weren't negotiations, they were ransom demands from a cosmic protection racket. General, he managed, his voice slightly higher than usual, surely we can find middle ground that doesn't involve the complete subjugation of 12 billion sentient beings. Middle ground is for species that can defend themselves, Thaxmore replied, rising from his chair. His full height cast shadows across half the table. You have exactly 10 minutes to accept our terms, or we resume combat operations. Starting with this station. Jake, who had been quietly working on a crossword puzzle throughout the entire exchange, looked up with mild interest. Hey, what's a 7-letter word for someone who takes things too seriously? Starts with T. Krel'thon's eye stalks nearly tied themselves in knots. Jake. This is not the time for word games, tyrant. Jake snapped his fingers triumphantly. Thanks, buddy. That was driving me crazy. Thaxmore's sensory clusters focused on the human with the intensity of targeting computers acquiring a lock. What is this creature? Oh, I'm Jake. Nice armor, by the way. Very shiny. Must take forever to polish. Jake stood up and stretched casually. So, you guys are really committed to this whole galactic domination thing, huh? That's intense. The silence that followed could have been weaponized. Thaxmore's combat pheromones saturated the air. You mock us, flesh thing? Mock? Nah, man, just wondering if you've considered therapy. All this anger can't be good for your health. Krel'thon began composing his final diplomatic report as Thaxmore's claws extended with metallic clicks. The war was about to resume. Thaxmore's claws scraped against his personal communicator as he activated the fleet-wide channel. His voice carried the weight of impending annihilation. All vessels, prepare for immediate combat operations. Target the station's reactor core. Leave no survivors. Through the chamber's viewports, the Nexari dreadnoughts began rotating their massive weapon arrays. Energy signatures spiked across every spectrum as plasma cannons charged to full capacity. The space around the station lit up like a deadly constellation of death. Well, Jake said, finishing the last clue in his crossword, this escalated quickly. He stood up, brushing invisible lint off his casual clothing. Hey, Ambassador Krel'thon, mind if I handle this real quick? I promise it won't take long. Krel'thon's translator short-circuited briefly. Handle what? Jake, those are planet-killing warships. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a solar system. Yeah, I can see that. Jake walked around the conference table with the unhurried pace of someone heading to get more coffee. Pretty intimidating stuff. But here's the thing about intimidation. He stopped directly in front of Thaxmore, craning his neck to look up at the 9-foot killing machine. It only works if the other guy knows he should be scared. Thaxmore's combat reflexes engaged instantly. His arm spikes extended, his targeting systems locked onto Jake's vital organs, and his pheromone glands released enough chemical warnings to evacuate a small city. Stand down, human, or I will end your pathetic existence. Jake nodded thoughtfully. That's a fair point. But before you do that, can I ask you something? How long has it been since you guys had a really good laugh? The question hung in the air like a glitch in reality itself. Laugh? Thaxmore's sensory clusters twitched in confusion. Yeah, you know, humor? Comedy? That thing where something so ridiculous you can't help but make happy noises? Jake's grin widened. Because I've got this joke, and I think you're really going to love it. Before anyone could process what was happening, Jake Morrison did something that violated every known principle of diplomacy, military strategy, and basic survival instincts. He started telling jokes. But not just any jokes. These were the kind of jokes that transcended species barriers, cultural differences, and rational thought itself. Jokes so fundamentally absurd, so perfectly timed, and so utterly unexpected that they bypassed every defense mechanism the Nexari had developed over millions of years of evolution. So a Nexari walks into a bar. Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, and the bartender says, "Why the long face?" And the Nexari goes, "I just conquered 12 star systems, enslaved billions of beings, and turned entire worlds into ash, but my mom still won't return my calls." Thaxmore's combat stance wavered slightly. Jake continued without missing a beat. "Then there's this one about 3 Nexari admirals comparing their fleets. First one says, 'My dreadnought is so big, it has its own gravity well.' Second one says, 'That's nothing. Mine is so powerful, it can crack a moon just by looking at it.' Third one says, 'Guys, calm down. Size doesn't matter. It's how you use your plasma cannons that counts." A sound escaped from Thaxmore's vocal apparatus. It wasn't quite a laugh, but it wasn't a war cry either. Jake kept going, his delivery perfect, his timing flawless. Each joke was perfectly crafted to appeal to the Nexari psychology while being completely, utterly harmless. He told stories about confused navigation computers, overprotective battle armor, and the universal struggle of trying to look intimidating while dealing with space traffic. Within 60 seconds, something unprecedented began happening throughout the Nexari fleet. Combat personnel were pausing at their stations. Weapons officers were making strange wheezing sounds. War General Thaxmore himself was experiencing muscle contractions in his facial region that his species hadn't used in 10,000 years. They were laughing. All of them. The most feared military force in the galaxy was having an uncontrollable fit of the giggles. "Stop," Thaxmore gasped, his targeting systems completely offline. "What sorcery is this?" "No sorcery," Jake replied cheerfully. "Just really, really good timing. See, nobody ever tries to make you guys laugh. They're all too busy being terrified. But laughter? That's the one thing armor can't protect against." Thaxmore looked around the chamber, then at his fleet, then back at Jake. His weapon systems powered down automatically. We surrender." Krel'thon stared at the scene unfolding before him with the expression of someone watching the fundamental laws of reality fold themselves into origami. War General Thaxmore, conqueror of star systems and nightmare of 1,000 worlds, was sitting on the floor holding his armored sides while making high-pitched wheezing sounds that his species hadn't produced since the dawn of their civilization. The Nexari fleet, moments away from reducing the station to component atoms, was now drifting helplessly through space as their crews experienced their first cases of uncontrollable laughter in evolutionary memory. Emergency broadcasts crackled across all frequencies as Nexari officers tried to explain to their high command why they couldn't stop giggling long enough to fire their weapons. "Jake," Krel'thon whispered, his voice translator barely functioning, "what exactly did you just do?" Jake had returned to his seat and was pouring himself another cup of coffee from a thermal container he'd somehow acquired. "Oh, that? Basic human crowd control. Works every time." He took a thoughtful sip. "You see, every species in the galaxy has the same basic response to humor. The neural pathways are practically universal. Problem is, most folks are too scared or too serious to try it on the scary guys. But they're warriors. They've conquered half the galaxy. Sure, but they're still people, right? Just really, really angry people who've forgotten how to have fun." Jake gestured toward Thaxmore, who was now attempting to stand but kept collapsing into fresh fits of laughter. "When's the last time anyone told that guy a joke instead of screaming and running away?" The implications hit Krel'thon like a cargo freighter traveling at relativistic speeds. 50,000 years of galactic diplomacy, and nobody had tried making the bad guys laugh. It was so simple, so obvious, so completely insane that it actually worked. The communication channels lit up like a festival as word spread across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. The Zephyrian Empire's High Council called an emergency session to discuss humor-based conflict resolution. The Crystal Collective immediately began analyzing the molecular structure of laughter. 3 different species filed patents on joke telling as a military strategy. On Nexari Prime, the Supreme War Council was in complete chaos. field reports described entire battalions of their finest warriors reduced to helpless giggling by something called comedic timing. Military analysts were frantically trying to develop countermeasures against aggressive humor deployment. Admiral Krel'thon to Nexari Command, Thaxmore managed between residual chuckles, his voice carrying a tone nobody had heard from him in centuries. We are formally requesting immediate peace negotiations. Full treaty. Complete cessation of hostilities. And could someone please ask the human if he knows any more jokes about navigation computers? Jake raised his hand cheerfully. Got a whole collection. Want to hear the one about the GPS unit that became self-aware and started giving relationship advice? Thaxmore's renewed laughter echoed through the chamber. Krel'thon finally understood why Earth had sent only one human. It wasn't because they underestimated the threat or lacked proper military assets. It was because they knew something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't a plasma cannon or a quantum torpedo. Sometimes it was just the ability to make someone remember what it felt like to be happy. Jake Morrison hadn't ended a war through violence or intimidation. He'd ended it by reminding everyone involved that they were still capable of joy. The treaty was signed 30 minutes later, with both sides still occasionally breaking into spontaneous giggles. 6 months later, Ambassador Krel'thon sat in his renovated office, reviewing the most bizarre diplomatic reports in galactic history. The Nexari Empire had transformed their entire military structure into something called Laughter Division, where former warriors now specialized in aggressive comedy deployment for conflict resolution. Their recruitment posters read, "Join the Nexari Comedy Corps, we'll make you die laughing." The galaxy was experiencing its most peaceful era in 50,000 years. Not because of superior firepower, advanced diplomacy, or technological breakthroughs, but because everyone was too busy cracking jokes to start wars. Every major civilization had implemented human consultation protocols, mandatory procedures requiring comedic assessment before any military action. The Zephyrian Empire's war room now featured a dedicated humor specialist who evaluated the entertainment value of potential conflicts. The Crystal Collective had appointed an official chief giggling officer to their high command. "Computer," Krel'thon said, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who'd witnessed the universe's greatest practical joke. "Display current threat assessment for known hostile species. Current galactic threat level, minimal. Primary concerns include the vegan separatists demanding better stand-up comedy venues, the Andromedan pirates requesting joke-writing workshops, and 17 different species filing formal complaints that their traditional war chants aren't funny enough." Krel'thon's head tentacles drooped in amused defeat. Humanity had achieved what 50 millennia of advanced civilizations couldn't manage, universal peace through the ancient art of making people snort with laughter at inappropriate moments. His communication panel chimed with an incoming message. The holographic display showed Jake Morrison sitting in what appeared to be a luxury transport, surrounded by an impressive collection of alien bodyguard certificates, of humanitarian awards, and several trophies labeled Galaxy's funniest conflict resolution specialist. "Hey, Ambassador." Jake waved cheerfully. "Just finished mediating a trade dispute between the Centauri Mining Consortium and the Belters Union. Turns out the whole thing started because somebody mispronounced asteroid in a way that sounded really inappropriate in 17 different languages. Got it sorted, though. Had them all laughing so hard they forgot what they were fighting about." "Where are you headed next?" Krel'thon asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Would you believe the Andromeda Galaxy? Apparently they've got this whole interdimensional war situation happening, and someone recommended they try the human approach." Jake's grin widened. "I'm bringing my material. Got some great jokes about parallel universes and temporal paradoxes." As Jake's transmission ended, Krel'thon leaned back in his chair and contemplated the cosmic irony. The universe's most advanced civilizations had spent eons developing increasingly sophisticated ways to destroy each other. It took one human with a coffee addiction and terrible timing to remind everyone that maybe, just maybe, They should try having fun instead. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks later, Krel'thon cornered Jake at the Galactic Council's annual peace celebration, determined to finally understand what had actually happened in that conference room. "Jake," he said, his voice carrying the exhausted curiosity of someone who'd been pondering cosmic mysteries for months, "I need to know. What exactly did you do to the Nexari? The scientific community is going insane trying to figure out your methodology." Jake paused mid-bite of what appeared to be a sandwich containing ingredients from 6 different star systems. "Oh, that? It's actually pretty simple when you think about it." He gestured with his food. "See, every species in the galaxy has been so focused on being bigger, stronger, and scarier than everyone else that they forgot the most basic rule of social interaction, which is, nobody expects the comedy Inquisition." Jake's grin was infectious. "Think about it. When someone's charging at you with plasma cannons blazing, the last thing they're prepared for is a knock-knock joke. Their entire psychological framework is built around intimidation and fear responses. Humor completely bypasses all of that and hits them right in the universal funny bone." Krel'thon nodded slowly, finally understanding. "So you weaponized joy?" "More like I reminded everyone that joy was an option. Turns out, most of these terrifying conqueror types are actually pretty lonely. They've been stuck in these aggressive roles for so long they forgot what it felt like to just laugh at something stupid." Meanwhile, Krel'thon was updating the official Galactic Threat Assessment Manual. Under the section titled Species Human, he typed, "Deceptively primitive appearance conceals unprecedented capacity for psychological warfare through comedic deployment. Standard military protocols ineffective. Recommend immediate cooperation with any human requests, regardless of apparent absurdity." The manual's final entry, now required reading for all diplomatic corps, contained a simple directive that had become known throughout 47 galaxies as the Morrison Protocol. When humans offer help, just say yes and don't ask questions. Trust us on this one. As Jake finished his interdimensional sandwich, he looked up at Krel'thon with that same casual expression he'd worn while single-handedly ending a galactic war. "Want to hear the one about the quantum physicist who walked into a bar?" he asked. "It's got multiple punchlines, but they all exist in superposition until you actually hear them." Krel'thon sighed, his tentacles already twitching with anticipatory amusement. Some things, he realized, truly were universal.